3 presentations. Well done.
Right, I'll kick off with some questions. It's a macro and a micro. Why, when green energy will, for business, provide more profit than hydrocarbon, and for government it will provide more long-term jobs, is there such a structural opposition in so many jurisdictions to move into green energy? That's the macro one. The micro one is, when we talk to people, the form and content of that communication has to be targeted to the particular typologies. What work have you done to talk to people in the right way to persuade them, either through a sense of civic belonging, or for ethical reasons, or religious reasons, or political reasons, that they need to not just change their behaviour, but to change their agency as citizens?
2 good questions.
You're going to have a go at that one first, isn't it?
The second, the micro, I could have a go at.
Yeah, that's the easy one.
Okay. Well, because, I mean, these guys might have to more say on the macro, but approval ratings for renewable energy are very, very high in this country, right? Over 85% in general. It's very different when you start put dots on maps.
Yeah.
So that's the context.
Shall I have a go at the macro one? I might be a little bit controversial here, but one thing I think about the macro one is that it's very easy for central government to look at, well, they're always looking for big silver bullets. And so they're really attracted when people come along, say, lobbyists come along on behalf of certain companies to say, we can solve your problems. We can just put in nuclear. We can just clean out the North Sea of every square cubic inch, or cubic inch of gas. We can solve all your problems for you. And by the way, we can prop up the 2 businesses that really form the major part of the UK's contribution to pension funds. You know, we've got a real structural problem in this country, which is that BP and Shell have been major, linchpins of the economy for so long. So this, I think there are some real, it's a sort of Minister of Magic in a Harry Potter moment when you take office and the first thing that the portrait tells you is all the rubbish things that you didn't know about before you were Minister of Magic. You become Prime Minister and you get really scared by those things, and then lobbyists come along telling you that they've got the silver bullet. And by the way, you have shares in the silver bullet, if I'm allowed to be that controversial. Being filmed, oh my God. But I just think there's a nexus going on there that's really, really hard to break. Because as soon as you start to break it, there is something really deeply democratic about the way that a decentralised, renewably based energy system works. And by the way, we only get there if we get the sort of active engagement and citizenship that Sam's been talking about. And we get that active engagement and citizenship if people see that the solutions they're putting in themselves at local energy are just and fair. And just getting that proper conversation happening right at the national government. We really do need people there who have some proper scientific and business knowledge themselves. And much though I wasn't a supporter of her at the time, one good thing about Margaret Thatcher is that she did understand that stuff. And she actually got the first seminar on climate change happening when she was Prime Minister. It was that Tony Blair picked up when he was Prime Minister. We need some people who really know stuff other than money running the country. It stuck my head right out.
Nigel, do you have a question?
Well, we haven't addressed the micro one. But
Scott,
No, go ahead.
I think that was about people.
don't do people.
anything on the big one?
I think Barbara summarised the macro one, I think, really well. I think if you look at kind of the renewable generation, it is a kind of scary concept in some ways, and to actually transition to a much more cleaner system, you do need something in order to make sure that you can balance the system, and at the moment it would be extremely costly to do that entirely with batteries, and that's why we still have generators that are essentially paid to be there as reserve and things like that. So it is scary, but I think that transition just needs to accelerate, and I think that's one amazing thing about kind of community energy is actually that ability to kind of accelerate that argument towards renewable energy. I've kind of forgotten what the micro question was, but at the time I think
it's how we try and communicate with people to explain why change is good, not just for them, but for everyone. Because the message and the way that message is delivered has to be different from different constituencies. There's the Tory rural, there's the urban liberal, there are all sorts of audiences there, and one message doesn't work. One message for all of them will have some people say, go hang yourself, and other people say, oh yes, great, great, great.
Yeah.
Climate Exchange produced some very good material on how to talk to the centre-right.
Do you mean climate outreach?
Sorry, climate outreach, thank you.
Climate outreach based in Oxford.
Yeah.
And they're a hugely successful charity now.
And I've used those materials myself, and they really do work.
Yeah, I did a project with them actually. So another bit of my research is all looking at small businesses as a very difficult to engage community of nearly 6 million enterprises in this country, and with all kinds of different values and missions and everything else. And one of the we used Climate Outreach's work. They've done this stuff on the centre right. They've also done they kind of specialise in how to talk to different communities other than the converted
Believers.
Yeah. So they've done work with faith groups, centre right, older people that are kind of over 70 as one. And one we use, there's a really, really nice framework called the theory of basic human values, which is this big psychological theory which says there are 10 types of values and we all kind of fit into this diagram. And on this project we were able to kind of show that there are ways that climate action is not incompatible with any of those values. Even the people who, there's one with power and achievement, those might be your kind of profiteering business leaders or something. Well, you just need to give them, start their sustainability journey by saying you can win a prize for this. The whole point, we're going to get you on your journey to net zero so you can be the first paperclip manufacturer to achieve this badge, and then on the kind of hedonist or innovative kind of Facebooks of the world, move fast, break things, then that's all about new technology and whizzy smart things, and that's compatible with net zero. And then on the kind of family business and traditional conservative values, it's about intergenerational responsibility, about handing stewardship of the environment, and handing things down about the countryside. So yeah, absolutely, there are different messages to different people.
I'm going to take one more question, which is...
Yes, I just wondered what your collective opinion was on Ecotricity's green gas and grass project.
I think you just answered that question.
I just don't understand the need to keep burning things. It's just, we need to get away from burning things. And to get enough grass, we've got a real problem with land. And to grow the grass big enough and thick enough, we've got a real problem with the nutrients that we would then take out of that land. That's my personal view. So no, don't like it personally. That's not speaking as the low carbon hub because we don't take a view on these things. Go on.
We've got hands up anyway, so Jen, right down the front, let's take a couple more questions.
Yeah, we noticed today coming up from Reading direction, all the new houses, no chimneys. I've lived for 30 odd years in South Devon, and we fought there with the council because they were putting up low cost houses, supposedly for local people, one source of heating and everything, just electricity. No gas in the villages, no fires, so we had power cuts, we had power outages, we had families virtually freezing. Now that the technology's improved, we have a log burning stove in Whitney, where I live. It's the new high spec. There is so much technology with it. You see somewhere over there, the little fans. Well, that technology, that means the fan put the heat around your house, will also, if you get the white box with it, charge your mobile phones, produce enough electricity to run LED lighting. You can get now a cylinder that goes around your chimney that will give you boiling hot water, which you can then use the extra heat to pump it round to the radiator. You're getting so much energy out of that wood. If you take a piece of wood, and I'm a naturalist, I do study fungi and all sorts of things, you get the same amount of carbon out of it, whether you burn it now, leave it to rot in the forest, turn it into a building. Eventually the net carbon, and that's the same. By us using it and putting it to a great use, I recycle loads of wood out of skips. I don't pay for heating in my house. It all comes from that free wood. And on top of that, you still get the ash, which has got all the nutrients in it, which can go on the garden. If you're slightly worried what your source of your wood is, you put it underneath hedges and shrubs rather than on fruit and veg. But it's the ultimate way of recycling. At the moment, you go to the dump, and they're taking wood chip away. In Devon, most of it went to landfill, which is actually criminal. And we got them there to agree that the guys would put all the wood to one side, and different volunteers would come and collect it up and give it to old people and people who needed it, and it was used as fuel. Mm? The other thing with it is
we've still got the same problem of volume.
The problem as well is this fanatical urge to plant trees. I was shown in the 70s by a lovely gentleman called Fred Speakman, wrote several books in Epping Forest. The way you plant trees and the way country people used to do it, you collected your seed locally, you went along with a stick, and you dropped the seed in each hole. It's what the squirrels and the birds have done for thousands of years. You don't go and buy cheap trees from Eastern Europe and bring them to this country. We've introduced southern oak dieback. We've now introduced ash disease from imported trees. And the chances are the owners coming in the same way.
No, I agree with you on trees, absolutely. Grow your own.
80% of the trees that get planted die. You're also paying for treated wooden stakes to hold them up, and plastic tubes, which are ghastly things. I visited a woodland up near Chipping Norton, leading a nature walk, and there must have been 1,000 plastic tubes just lying on the ground, uncollected.
Yeah, some good points, thank you.
You start on things that you can do easily.
Well, I'll add to that a little bit, because I did some research recently looking at a wood burner and how much wood is required to run a wood burner. And I went to somebody who'd been doing it for a while, and he showed me his shed. He said, at the start of the year, I fill this shed, that's how much timber I need to keep my house heated for the year. And the space was probably from here to that end wall, by that kind of width, to that kind of depth and timber. And I think that's the challenge, is that if we all had it, we just there wouldn't be enough timber.
The thing is, you don't, if your house is looked after, if you've done the windows and you've done the other stuff, we light our fire in the winter, 4:30. Most evenings we just put one load on and that's it.
Yeah.
Because it's such a big thermal mass, you can make it last longer, just put a few bricks around it or some stones, which has great heat capacity.
I would just add that, so I really agree, and the new generation are incredible in their efficiency. The reason it's not strongly adopted by policymakers is largely because of air pollution. But so I think it's a great solution in the countryside, because it's a local air pollution issue.
And I think the point that you make about thermal mass is one that we all have to hear, irrespective of what heat, you want minimal space heating basically. So that really has to happen, and then the source of heat is most appropriate to your area.
Let's have one more then, last one.
So in following on quite nicely from innovations in home heating, I wondered particularly, Barbara, if you'd heard of the zero emission boiler called the TEPIO, which is a drop-in replacement of a British innovation that deserves to be more widely heard about. It's a drop-in replacement of a gas boiler. It's a large thermal mass, I believe it heats to 600 degrees or so, like a super large storage heater. You don't have to change your radiators. It stores up overnight on cheap electricity, obviously when the grid's hopefully got most surplus renewables on it. I just wondered, firstly, I haven't encountered it, but how that stacks up in your mind versus, say, heat pumps, where there's a controversy surrounding the lower flow temperatures, you need bigger emitters, and how that stacks up.
I just think that there's no one size fits all for this. Anything you do in terms of space heating has to start with getting your thermal mass right and making your building as undrafty as possible, although personally I think that actual air changes are a good thing. And then it's a question of what suits your particular situation better. I happen to live in a deep retrofit Victorian terraced house with a heat pump that does the hot water as well as the space heating, and it's low temperature underfloor heating and masses of insulation under the small pipes. And I absolutely love it because it doesn't have any sort of single sources of really hot heat. So I don't respond very well personally to dry air. I'm not very good at living with air conditioning. I'm not very good on planes. I wouldn't live in a house now that didn't have that sort of heating because it's a very gentle on humans form of heating.
Kids, it's great.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. And you're just heating the air where you all live rather than the air underneath the ceiling. So I think there are sort of, for me, there would be a number of principles about how you want the setup to be that then you stick the heat into.
But such a retrofit is enormously expensive for, say, a Victorian house. What I think is attractive about this particular technology is rather than, say, a £10,000 to £15,000 price tag for doing a deep retrofit, you've got a drop-in replacement that is on par with the cost of a combi boiler. And
yeah, but I take your point, and everybody has to make their own decisions at whatever point, which is why I think that focusing on everybody's journey, that customer journey thing is really, really important, which is the basis of our Cosy Homes service. At some point, we bloody well have to pay for dealing with our leaky homes that are the shame of Europe. We've got the worst housing stock in Europe. So there are individual decisions, which I absolutely understand, about what you do with your house. And one of the reasons that you make that decision is because you've got no support from anywhere else, which was the policy framework I was talking about before, that we don't have anymore, where the network operators were required to help do that sort of deep retrofitting. And I do think that we need to be thinking, so I'm not at all saying that what you're proposing is wrong, Phil. I'm really not.
No, and what I'm proposing is that insulation is key to my suggestion as well, but I would say that the underfloor retrofitting, underfloor heating retrofit part of what you did was very expensive. Take that out of the equation, keep your radiators, keep them the same size.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that the floor is as much of a problem in terms of a house being cold as the walls. And then further to that, I'm saying that at some point we have to grasp the nettle that we have a really poor housing stock. Right. And so strategically, I'm looking for ideas that really help get that investment into the the fabric of the houses that we all live in, and then we can make the decisions such as you're making about how we operate those. And I'm really attracted by ideas like carbon insetting, where instead of businesses planting trees in Costa Rica or wherever it might be, they reduce their carbon by helping to retrofit somebody's house locally. So we're just looking at that as an opportunity. And the other one that I'm really attracted by, no idea whether any, but every time I mention it to policymakers and people, they don't go, you're mad, is wouldn't it be brilliant if the distribution network operators could be allowed to treat the buildings that their network serves as part of the infrastructure of the whole energy system, and therefore invest in that infrastructure? And then their investors and shareholders would be really incentivised to put loads of money into making all of our houses, better than Swedish houses. And then we can choose what technology goes in.
Thank you, Barbara. I just want to make a couple of sort of closing remarks before we finish the session off, and I'm going to make a bit of a plea for you to do something as well. So, I think first of all, let's say a big thank you for the three panellists coming tonight, giving us. One of the points I wanted to pick up on was this. I think there's a few things where there's stuff we can do ourselves. I think there's been examples all along of what we can do to try and change the impact we have. And I think there's a danger that a lot of people can sit around and go, oh, it's for them to do and they have to fix it. And it's all like technology, I'll just wait till the new car gets invented, it'll be fine. There's stuff we can do today to help the situation, if enough of us do it. Or, as Sam was saying, put pressure on our politicians to change things as well, then we'll have an impact. And I think it's a pretty depressing time at the moment when you think about what's happening. We all need to feel motivated to do something. And one of the things Barbara said was that for this local energy plan to work, housing stock has to be really good. Now we're in an unfortunate situation where there's going to be a lot of houses built around this village over the next 10, 15 years. There's something that's happening right now that flies against everything we see and hear and what Barbara's talking about. The developers that are going to develop the garden village, and there's a thing called an area action plan that governs how that will be done, are being allowed to develop in a fashion that isn't net zero. It is not setting those estates out to be right for the future. The government inspector has asked for critical wording that WOTC put into that plan to be removed, all around net zero and carbon neutral and the way those homes are constructed. WOTC have just opened the consultation on the revised version of the document. So if you feel strongly about this and you want to see houses built properly in the future, go on to that consultation and make statements, and you send an email in to say, please, will you not remove those clauses and oppose what the government's inspector has asked to be changed about those policies, because we are not going to get the best possible housing stock built around our village. And we're beyond the point of saying we don't want the houses. I think we're going to get houses, they need to be the best possible houses in our village. So there's a little plea from me.